Hi everyone, this is Grant Ellis, aka pfcamygrant from OutpostZero. I've been doing some articles for them for the past month and a half or so, and it's a big day today because my copy of Lord of the Rings living card game, The Lost Realm, the latest expansion, has just come over. So let's get to opening it up and checking it out. So we've had the cover art exposed to us for a while. It's been spoiled for a while. Most of the spoilers have revealed that they're going to expand upon the Dunedain and Ranger traits, and we'll have a new deck type. Let's go ahead and read the back. Starts with a quote, "Lonely men are we, rangers of the wild, hunters, but hunters ever of the servants of the enemy, for they are found in many places, not in Mordor only." I won't go too deep into the lore. There's other websites and other videos that do that better. You know, the Rangers are great at holding the shadow at bay. They travel the lands to the north, such as Eriador, etc., north of the Shire, and what they excel at is keeping the enemy from coming down into the land, such as Bree or the Shire, etc. And so let's read some of the flavor text. That for generations, the Rangers of the North have safeguarded the people of Breeland with their secret vigil. Okay, so they explain what I just explained to you far more succinctly, far more clearly. But now darkness descends from Angmar, and foul things once again invade the peaceful land of Arnor. In the Lost Realm, the players join forces with the valiant Dunedain as they protect the villages of Breeland, hunt orcs in the Weather Hills, and confront an ancient evil at Dead Man's Dyke. In addition to these exciting scenarios, the Lost Realm also includes new heroes and player cards to increase the customization options of the game. If you've come this far, you're probably well aware of the customization options of the game, but it's kind of important to reiterate that, especially to newer players. Like, I actually haven't been playing the game that long. I've been playing since about August of last year, and I played and I immediately got hooked. And I actually started with 2 copies of the core set, and the Voice of Isengard expansion, the Black Riders, the Dwarrowdelf cycle, and it was kind of a unique start to the game, just kind of jumping in like that. And I had a card pool that differed from friends of mine that play the game because I bought sets that were off the cycles that they had already purchased. So I had cards they had never seen before, and they had cards that I did not have access to, and some main staples as well. Let's go ahead and get past this shrink wrap and jump in and look at quickly through the rules, look for any new keywords that might be introduced, and let's also look at an overview of the player cards. I'm not going to spoil any of the encounters. I'm not going to look at any of the enemies. I always play scenarios blind initially, but I'm curious to see what deck types or how they've expanded upon the various spheres. So let's get going. Alright, so we've just removed the shrink wrap from the outer packaging. Has that new card smell. It's a great, and just to reiterate, I haven't really looked at the cards. I know Hall of Beorn had posted the bulk of the cards already. I'd seen a couple of them popping up, and I know Tales from the Cards. That blog had posted a little bit about this new expansion, but I haven't really gone into it deep. I'm just curious to get in myself and see what it has to offer. So let's remove the outer packaging and come to the rules. There are no advertisements above it. I won't spoil the quote. Let's just see if there's any new keywords. Kind of flip through. Okay, it looks like there's quite a bit. It looks like they're bringing back the time mechanic that was imminent inside the last cycle, the Ringmaker cycle of the Voice of Isengard expansion. Encounter is a new keyword that appears on player cards with an encounter card back, and it has the following rules. Player cards with encounter keyword cannot be included in any player's deck because they have encounter card backs. Instead, when setting up the scenario, each player may set up to 3 cards with the encounter keyword aside out of the play. These cards do not count towards the character's deck minimum of 50 cards. Player cards with the encounter keyword have a dash instead of a cost because they are never played from a player's hand. Instead, player cards with the encounter keyword are meant to be shuffled into the encounter deck. In order to shuffle one of the set aside player cards into the encounter deck, a card effect must instruct a player to do so. So let's go over and recap kind of what we've read so far. you're able to take 3 of these cards that have encounter backs. That's, it doesn't have the 1 ring on the back, it has the Eye of Sauron. You're allowed to set up to 3 of those out of play. They're not played from the hand, they get shuffled into the encounter deck. And you don't get to do that unless a card effect instructs you to do so. The when revealed effect can't be cancelled, and if a player with the encounter keyword is dealt as a shadow card to an enemy, it is treated like an encounter card. Place it into the encounter discard pile after resolving the enemy's attack. It looks like there's going to be side quests. It's a new type of quest. It'll be a secondary adventure that the heroes may undertake while pursuing the main goals. And there's different types. Some have player backs, some have encounter backs. As I start to play the game a little more, I'll get a little deeper into that. The side quests had been spoiled well in advance of the shipping of the game. We'll see. I'll learn more about that as I play through the scenarios. I'm not going to go in too deep into it, but it's important to know that we're looking at time, we're looking at player cards with encounter backs that will be shuffled into the encounter deck, and we're also going to have side quests. So we're already seeing a shift in the meta. And it looks like the rest appears to be rules, which we're not going to read. It's instructing us not to read them. And we have an advertisement for the Black Riders on the back. That's a brief overview of the rules. Again, hit 3 points. We're seeing the time keyword. The encounter keyword is going to be on player cards with encounter backs. And we're going to have side quests. And also that there will be cards with the text immune to player card effects. Let's get into the cards and see what we have as far as player cards for the rest of this deluxe expansion. Alright, I've just removed the shrink wrap of the player cards. We're going to look through these, and I'm going to just go over the player cards. As soon as I come to the encounter cards, we'll stop, and let's see if I can kind of shift through this to see kind of where they stop. Well, these are the encounter keyword player cards, so I'm actually going to pull those out. This seems to be them. So, I'm not going to do any magic tricks, but we'll just sort of go through these. It's going to take a little bit of time. How many of these are there? There's a bit. But most importantly is to remember that three of each card outside of the heroes should be included in each deck, more or less. So we should be able to get through this fairly quickly. Again, bear with me. So the first hero in this set, he's been spoiled, is Tactics Aragorn. Aragorn comes in many flavors. Later in the year, we'll see Fellowship Aragorn, but let's focus on Tactics Aragorn. He has the Dunedain trait, he's a ranger, and he's a warrior. He's unique. 2 willpower, 3 attack, 2 defense, 5 hits, 12 threat cost, just like all the other Aragorns out there. Where this Aragorn is different is each engaged enemy with you gets -1 defense. And then the response is, after Aragorn participates in an attack that destroys the enemy, he can choose an enemy not engaged with you and engage that enemy. It might be useful to pull enemies away from other players that don't necessarily have a way to defend it. It may be used to pull enemies down from the staging area. It's a really useful trait, and from what I gather from some of the leaks that have been going around, which I've been trying to avoid, is the Dunedain excel at engaging enemies, and most of their benefits happen from getting engaged with enemies. And no surprise that Tactics Aragorn has an ability that involves engaging enemies. It's important to note the timing, and I'm not the best rules lawyer out there in this game, but this happens after he's attacked to destroy an enemy. He's able to engage an enemy. That means the enemies have already had their opportunity to attack. They've already declared defenders. That means the enemy you engage should not be able to attack you. You have the option of engaging it. And that's useful in regards to timing, because you won't have to declare defenders. The enemies have already had their attacks. as far as I'm aware. One of the blogs out there run by smarter players can give us a clarification. Second hero of the cycle is Halbrod, and he was discarded already. It's exciting to finally get him. That gives us the opportunity to help put together a Grey Company deck. And he also has the Dunedain and Ranger trait. And while you are engaged with an enemy, Halbrod does not exhaust to commit to a quest. You may optionally engage one additional enemy during the encounter phase. Again, building off that Dunedain trait of, or Dunedain ability of engaging enemies. And let's go over some of his stats. He has a threat cost of 10, 2 willpower, 2 attack, 2 defense, 4 hit points. Similar to a character like Lord Faramir, the hero version of Faramir, I believe. We're getting into the ally cards now. Weatherhill's Watchman. Weatherhill's Watchman is a Dunedain. He has a cost of 2. He's a leadership ally. He's a willpower of 1, attack of 1, 2 hits. And once he enters play, you're allowed to search the top 5 cards of your deck for a signal card and add it to your hand. Shuffle the other cards back in your deck. Way back in the Mirkwood cycle, Shadows of Mirkwood, we saw signal cards, and they began developing that trait. Normally the signal cards were used to either add a buff or an ability to a character, and what the Watchman does is he allows you to basically tutor those cards to your hand. It also it gives you a chance to basically add 1 signal card, it looks like, to the hand. So we'll go through the Dunedain Hunter, cost of 0, 1 willpower, 3 attack, 1 defense, 3 hits. After the Dunedain Hunter enters play, search the top 5 cards of the encounter deck for a non-unique enemy and put it into play engaged with you. If no enemy enters play by this effect, discard Dunedain Hunter. Shuffle this encounter deck. This is really a come and get me tactic. You're basically hunting for enemies, pulling them to your play area engaged with you, and then basically probably going to beat him down. He actually has really good attack. He'd be useful in a battle quest using his attack for questing instead of willpower. And I kind of like him. He looks like he's a little tricky to play because he is dependent on an enemy card coming up. But a lot of the scenarios have a great many enemies. Alright, you'll have to apologize. I lost my train of thought as I received a work-related email. Making movie magic in Washington, D.C. is no easy task. Basically, I like this card. He's got good attack, he's got decent hits, he's beefy, and he's tactics. And I believe my plan is going to be to integrate Tactics Aragorn into a 3 hunters deck with Gimli and Legolas, and anything I can do to either play off the theme of Dunedain or anything I can do to make that deck as beefy as possible and have a certain uniqueness to it, incorporate the new cards, should be fun. The next card is the Sarn Forward Sentry. It's a lore hero with 3 cost. I think that's the highest cost so far. 2 willpower, 1 attack, and 2 hits. And then after Sarn Forward Sentry enters play, draw 1 card for each enemy engaged with you. Again, playing off the being engaged with enemies is beneficial for Dunedains. It's a scout card. I think it's the 2nd scout card. I believe Idrain, the hero, was the 1st scout. And possibly not. Don't quote me on that. Basically, it's a way a Dunedain deck in the lore sphere would enable card draw, which is important for thinning and getting through your deck, getting to the cards you need. Let's check the next hero, or the next player card. Warden of Anuminas, and please forgive me for butchering pronunciations. Anuminas. I don't know. It was worth a shot. He's a 4-cost spirit ally, and it looks like he gets 1 point in willpower for each enemy engaged with you. Unique, he has a cost of 4, 0 willpower starting, which goes up for having enemies engaged with you, 2 attack, 2 defense, 3 hits. He has a cost of 4 though. That's a little on the pricey side. There might be ways to cheat him into play, either through sneak attack or elf stone. There's all sorts of different ways you can get high cost heroes, or high cost allies, forgive me, into play. Next ally, no, it's a signal. It's an event. Ranger summons. Play only if you control a Dunedain hero. So, Halbrod and Aragorn, they're both Dunedain. I believe there's a few others, maybe. I'd have to double check. But basically, it's a planning action. So during your planning phase, immediately after the resource phase, shuffle one of your set-aside Ranger of the North allies with the encounter keyword into the encounter deck. Then remove Ranger summons from the game. That means it doesn't go into your discard pile, it leaves play, and you're able to take one of those encounter cards backs and shuffle it into the encounter deck. You're able to sneak Rangers into the encounter deck. Just kind of a neat mechanic. The next event is Tireless Hunters. Play only before resolving enemy attack step. And it's a combat action. Choose an enemy not engaged with you, engage that enemy, then discard a shadow card from that enemy if able. This has to be done before the enemies attack you. Earlier in this video, we talked about the importance of timing and steps when engagement happens. And what this does is you engage an enemy, you get rid of the shadow card, it's still allowed to attack you, it looks like. It's a 1-cost event. Tactics event. We come to a lore event that has 0 cost. Expert Trackers. A response after you engage an enemy, exhaust a scout or ranger character to place X progress tokens on a location. X is the engaged enemy's printed threat. It's a new way to avoid location lock, it looks like. And you can exchange engagement for progress tokens onto a location. It says on a location, not the active location. It's an interesting effect. The next card is a 2-cost leadership attachment, Heir of Valandil, attached to a Dunedain hero. The planning action is exhaust Heir of Valandil to reduce the cost of the next Dunedain ally. You play this phase by 1 for each enemy engaged with you, so it's a way to get the cost of Dunedain allies or allies that have the Dunedain trait down by 1 for each enemy engaged with you. It doesn't look like there's a limit, which means you can possibly get allies down to a cost of 0. Useful. Athelis. It's a 1-cost lore attachment attached to a Dunedain or healer character. This is useful in campaign because we have the skilled healer card that we acquired in the Black Riders campaign, or the Black Rider segment of the Fellowship of the Rings, and it's interesting to see a card play off that. Discard Athelis and exhaust attached character to heal all damage on a character. You may discard a condition attachment from that character, which is useful. That means I don't have to put Miner of the Iron Hills into the deck, and I don't have to worry about the condition attachments. Secret Vigil. This was a spoiled card. It's one of the ones I heard about. Despite all efforts to avoid spoilers, still an interesting card. Alright, so it's a 1-event tactics attachment, and you attach it to an enemy, limit 1 per enemy, The enemy gets -1 to his threat, and then when the attached enemy is destroyed, reduce each player's threat by the attached enemy's printed threat. So it's a tactics form of threat reduction and threat control to reduce each player's threat. This is going to be extremely useful in Monosphere Tactics and in 4-player games. The Spirit Attachment of 1 cost. It's the Star Brooch. Attach it to a Dunedain or Noldor hero. Limit 1 per hero while you're engaged with an enemy. Attached hero gets +1 willpower and cannot have its willpower reduced. It's pretty powerful. One, there's plenty of treachery cards and other nasties that pull willpower down. A permanent +1 willpower is that's good stuff, especially if you're running a Noldor deck such as Glorfindel, Eladon, and Elrohir, or if you have Elrond in your deck, or if you have Aragorn, or any of the other Dunedain heroes, Halbrod, and don't quote me, but I think Barivor and Idrain are both Dunedain. I haven't looked in a little while. The next cards, these look like they are side quests. So limit 1 per deck. After this stage is defeated, each player may search his deck for 1 card and add it to his hand. Each player shuffles his deck. It looks like it requires 4 progress tokens. Looks like that's a cost of 0. I need to do a little bit more reading of the rules to figure out how these side quests work. That's a really interesting way to get your hands on a card that, one, you're either limited 1 to the deck with, such as Path of Need. It's also really useful for any card that you need that's a must-have or an auto-include, or a card that you're trying to mulligan for and you don't necessarily get. So what this does is it allows you with a little extra questing, it looks like, to get your hands on that necessary card to win the game. These are the player cards with the encounter keyword. You can see it has an encounter card back. One of our events earlier, the Ranger Summons, allows these to be shuffled into the deck, that was a leadership event. This is Encounter, Surge, Ranged, Sentinel. It's a Ranger of the North. He's a neutral ally that has no cost. He comes out of the encounter deck. 2 willpower, 2 attack, 2 defense. 3 hits. And the first player chooses a player to take control of Ranger of the North, then either deal 2 damage to an enemy or place 2 progress tokens on a location. So the first player is allowed to choose which player will receive this ally or have control of this ally. And then you're allowed to do either direct damage or place progress tokens on a location. It's fairly versatile. It does rely on being pulled from the encounter deck. So unless you have a way to blitz through the encounter deck, such as using Denethor's ability, or you have Hinamarth River Song to scry the encounter deck, it may be difficult to pull this guy or to find him. However, it's probably better to have him in there. Note, he does have Surge, so another encounter card will be revealed. And that looks like that's the last of our player cards. I hope you went through this patiently and you can get your hands on this. I'll do this again when the first adventure pack comes out, and again with the second adventure pack. They announced the third adventure pack today. As always, game on.